guys, a fun review today. We're talking about Uncharted. I don't normally talk about video games on the channel, but I actually am a big fan of video games in general, and the Uncharted franchise as a whole is one of my favorite ones, and I've played since the very beginning. Each of the video games, especially the second and fourth one, are some of my favorite video games I've ever played in my entire lifetime. So with that attachment to the source material, and just the general fact that this film has been in development hell for a very long time, cycling through a lot of different directors, then there's the very obvious stigma that most video game movies are just not good all around. So I did go into this kind of cautiously hopeful. The story here follows a young Nathan Drake who's recruited by a treasure hunter named Sully to work together on a treasure hunt to recover a fortune of treasures lost 500 years ago before it falls into possession of a ruthless foe. Being such a big fan of the video game franchise, I gotta say, with this film adaptation, it's not a complete dumpster fire like I was expecting it to be. No, it isn't great or anything. It's not gonna go down as one of the best video game adaptations of all time, but it's serviceable in some aspects. There's definitely some fun to be had watching the film. Like, I was never bored or anything watching it. Once Uncharted gets into the bulk of what made the video game so great, chasing after treasure, solving puzzles, looking at maps, all of that stuff, it has some popcorn entertainment quality to it. It's just that a lot of the action in Uncharted just isn't filmed all that great, and that does have to go back to the director themselves. Like I said before, this film has had a wide variety of directors be picked up and then dropped out. Sean Levy, Dan Trachtenberg, Travis Knight, inevitably settling on Ruben Fleischer, who we know directed Zombieland and also Venom. He does not excel in the action category, and that really shows with this film. The way that he shoots a lot of these different action sequences in Uncharted, it just feels quite generic run-of-the-mill shot selection, which isn't exactly what you want in an Uncharted film when the video game franchise is pretty much known for having this epic cinematic action quality to them. A handful of the big action set pieces in this film are pretty cool, but I am torn on them because, yeah, they are awesome, but they're just ripped right out of the video games. I've played them time and time again over the years, so I knew what to expect going into the film and how they would end. Like the crate sequence that opens up the film, like that was cool to see in live action. We've seen a lot of it in the trailers as well, so I knew it was there, but I would have liked to have had a bit more originality in some of the action sequences to, you know, bolster the film a little bit on its own outside of just relying on recapturing the stuff from the video games. I wanted a balance, and there's not a great balance here. Out of all of the big action that we get in Uncharted, I think the one that involves a helicopter is probably my favorite out of the bunch, but that's probably it for me. The way that they approach the story here is a bit more confusing and messy if you're a big fan of the video game franchise. It's something that you won't probably notice as much if you're just a casual fan or haven't played all the video games. When adapting video games into live action, I completely understand having to move around elements to the story to make it fit into a live action medium and just a film, because a film is much shorter than a video game. But the way that the film does it, where we're stitching together story elements and big action sequences from across most of the Uncharted franchise of video games and scrambling them around in a different order, it is a bit jarring, I'm not gonna lie. Like, yeah, it is trying to do its own thing while also being faithful to the source material with the Easter eggs and all that stuff involving Sam Drake. But the story they're trying to tell and the way that they approach it, it just feels weird, and it makes sense because of the fact that there's a lot of different people involved in the writing of this film between screenplay and story credits. It feels like a complete screenplay that's just kind of a mess, like there's too many cooks in the kitchen. It's not entirely all of the game's storylines mashed together or anything, because there is a certain level of originality here embedded in the film, because this is a Nathan Drake origin film at its heart, since he is much younger here than he is in the video game franchise. Having a much younger Nathan Drake do all of these adventures, while also the casting in general, it's been a point of contention ever since that stuff was announced, especially with Tom Holland portraying the young Nathan Drake, because I think he's a decent actor, but he does have that kind of stereotype here where most people kind of just see him as Peter Parker Spider-Man. Is he the Nathan Drake that we all loved from the video games voiced by Nolan North? Absolutely not. There is some room for growth here, though. His performance does fall flat in a few aspects, but I can see him potentially inevitably down the road being that Nathan Drake if we ever get to that point. As an origin story, you see the possibilities here as we get to see him gain that confident, cocky demeanor as we go on this treasure hunting adventure with him, solving puzzles, fighting off bad guys. He has some solid chemistry throughout the film with Sophia Ali, who plays Chloe. That's a character that I thought was kind of okay in this film. I mean, I'm not like over the moon about the character, but she was fine. The big thing that you really have to sell me on with this film is that connection between Nathan Drake and Sully, because they are the two best characters in the video games, and you want to have that connection on the live action screen as well. Nathan and Sully's dynamic in the film definitely had their fair share of decent moments where it was enjoyable and even got a laugh out of me here and there, and did give me that Nathan and Sully vibe that I wanted going into the film. The main problem here is just that Mark Wahlberg does not feel like Sully at all. Ever since that announcement that he was going to play Sully, I felt like he was going to be miscast, and unfortunately he was in the film. I don't get any sort of Sully vibes to him in this portrayal. He just feels like a more exaggerated version of Mark Wahlberg, which is kind of a problem for Mark Wahlberg in general with a lot of the roles that he plays, but he's just a jerk for the most part in this film. There's really no growth here for him as a character, and I just don't picture him being the Sully that we know and love later down on the line. Maybe a sequel will change my mind, but I really doubt it. Unfortunately, as much as it pains me to say about Antonio Banderas, because I love Antonio Banderas, he felt like a very wasted villain here. The potential here was great, and he didn't deliver, but I don't think it was entirely his fault. I think he did try his best with what he was given, but he's not given a whole lot to begin with. To be fair, not all the villains in the Uncharted video games were all that great, but this character, he's just not very menacing whatsoever whenever he's on screen. This is definitely more of like a marketing problem, but all of the trailers of the film pretty much gave away the big action story beats in the film. There aren't really any big surprises if you've seen any of the promotional material, whether it be in the theater or on TV, which is a big bummer because Sony has a problem with doing that with a lot of their promotional material for a lot of films, and I guess if you've seen the trailers, you've kind of seen a lot of the big moments. All around, this isn't a terrible film by any means. There are some fun aspects to be had here. It's just all around, it just feels very generic, which is a big disappointment as a fan of the franchise because that franchise is so epic, and the film doesn't deliver on that epicness that made the Uncharted series so great in the first place. There is an excitement level to seeing some of these big action sequences from the Uncharted video games brought to life on the big screen, but that doesn't save the film from being all that interesting. If I wanted to enjoy all of those big action set pieces once again, I would just pop in one of the video games. They are done much better in the video games, and it's just a lot more fun that way. But with a few tweaks, I do think that a sequel could potentially be a lot better. First of all, you gotta downsize the writing team. There's no need for 3 to 5 people to be working on a screenplay for a film. Also, probably a better director, someone that's more suited for the action film genre. I think that Ruben Fleischer was not a very good pick here, but we did have a lot of people cycling in and out, so, you know, he got the job done at least. And also, I would probably want to just recast Sully. I know that they're probably not going to do that, of course, if they do have a sequel, but Mark Wahlberg does not work for me here. There is a tease for a sequel. We'll see if it ends up being made. You never really know. But let me know in the comments down below what you think of the Uncharted film. Did you like the film, not like the film? Are you a fan of the Uncharted games? And if you are, make sure you share your thoughts down below as well, because I'm really curious to see your differences, how you would feel about the film, because as a fan, I think that you'll approach this film a little bit differently compared to someone that's more of like a casual fan. Casual audience members are just people who are diehard Tom Holland fans. They'll probably love this film a lot more than me personally, but more power to those people. I'm all for other opinions, differing opinions, because part of the fun is having the conversation with you guys, whether I like a film or not like a film. Thank you guys as always checking out the reviews. I really appreciate it. Make sure to leave a like on the video. Also subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, so you update review reactions, unboxings, and more. Until next time, I'll see you guys later.